welcome to 30-Minute Reviews. I am Adam. We are here to discuss a pretty serious situation going on at Warner Brothers. I think we briefly touched on it when we talked about the Ezra Miller situation. But there is a fundamental problem that Warner Brothers has at the moment. How do I put this? Right now, the Warner Brothers Discovery merger is going on. Meaning that what happened was, as I understand it, if I understand it correctly, which is possible I don't, because I'm not exactly the smartest person on the planet, and I don't ever contend to be. But basically, as I understand it, Warner Brothers was owned by AT&T. I don't know if it still is, or what changed, or how that works, but Warner Brothers was owned by AT&T. I believe they're not anymore, and they were spun out into their own independent company. So Warner Brothers was owned by AT&T. AT&T also acquires Discovery. In a huge multi-billion-dollar deal, they acquire Discovery. Now, Discovery is, Discovery Channel, Food Network, Cooking Channel, HGTV, all of these major networks that, are, other things that they don't exactly have a stake in. And it's kind of a blind spot for Warner Brothers as a company, because, Disney has, Disney has National Geographic. Warner Brothers doesn't exactly have that kind of thing. So this would give them a foot in that marketplace. Fine, cool. All pretty cool stuff they have going on there. Now, herein lies the big question that comes about as a result of this huge, situation, is what happens now that the companies have now spun out? Warner Media is now Discovery. Warner Brothers Discovery, I believe, is the name of the company now, and it is now a separate, independent entity from AT&T. And because it's separate, independent from AT&T, they are now doing their own thing. Now, I'm assuming that because Discovery is getting a lot of say in the matter, usually the company being acquired, that's why I think I'm wrong about this, but usually the company being acquired doesn't get the level of say that Warner Brothers that Discovery has in the situation. So it seems that there still is some higher up at AT&T who's like, we are going to do this. There's still some running from AT&T, even if it is its own independent company. They still answer to AT&T. Warner Media is now not a publicly traded company, independent of AT&T. But to say that, that's happening, there is a conversation to be had about what that necessarily means and how it works. So they've started cleaning house at Warner Brothers. CEO, gone. Head of HBO Max content, gone. The human resources generalist, gone. The general counsel, gone. Ann Sarnoff, who you may have heard her name thrown around quite a bit, she is the studio head at Warner Brothers, gone. These are all major positions that have all been ousted in the last week or so, maybe 2 weeks. And these are all huge, major positions with major implications for how things are being done at the studio. And these are things that are going to impact relationships with the talent. And the talent being everyone from above the line to below the line, people involved. So, it's a big deal. It's a big, huge thing that's going on now that really should be addressed. So now, looking at that, now that we have this kind of context for what's going on, and we can be like, oh, so this is happening here. Let's see what that means. What does that mean for me, the viewer? Really, for right now, it appears nothing. It appears that everything is kind of business as usual at Warner Brothers, even though there isn't a new studio head named yet. There are still things happening. For example, Warner Brothers still is making movies. Movies that were in production are still currently in production, as nothing has changed there. Movies that were in pre-production are still kind of moving at that pace, where if you look at, today we got the announcement of Susan Sarandon joining Blue Beetle, and just things like that are kind of indicating that nothing has really changed on the day-to-day basis of Warner Brothers, including DC Films. Then came the last few days report. And it's part of a broader conversation. So if we look at what's going on, the CW has had a huge stake. DC has had a huge stake in in CW for about 20 years now. Because Smallville kicked it off, and that went for, I think, like 10, 11 years. Then Smallville comes off the air and is almost immediately replaced by Arrow, and then Arrow goes for 8. Now The Flash is going on season 9, and it'll be going to season 9 next year. Superman and Lois still seems to be, pulling strong ratings. But now some of these shows are not getting immediate pickups. That's a big deal for the CW, where they have these shows, and the shows are getting expensive. If you look at Legends of Tomorrow entering its 8th season, it is costing a lot of money in salary. To keep Katie Lotz on, and to keep, who else is still on from the original cast? I think it's really just her. Because Brandon Routh left, both Dominic Purcell and Wentworth Miller left. What's his name left? Rory from Doctor Who. Motherfucker, just go. You're already cutting me off into my lane. He left. So, most of the original cast is now gone. But still, the cast that has replaced them is aging up too, where it's what's her name, who plays Zari. She's been on for 4 years now, 5 years now. That's a lot. They just wrote off Nate, and Nate's been on since season 2. And cast becomes expensive. And I think that part of what Legends of Tomorrow could have done to alleviate this would have been to kind of turn the Wave Rider into kind of like a halfway house for superheroes. I think would have been the best way to handle the situation. Put it this way: if someone on their main show, and this would have helped the main shows too, Cyclecast and all of that, is that someone on the main show doesn't really have a story arc, send them to the Legends for a little bit, have them do a brief 1 or 2 season stint on Legends, and then it's oh, okay, we'll do that. And it would have made for more interesting television, I think. It would have made for more interesting, opportunities all around. But we're getting way off topic here. So now we have these shows all being canceled. And now The Flash got picked up for season 9 for reasons that are beyond my understanding. Because, look, I'm a fan of The Flash. I am one of the few who is still watching The Flash, because the numbers have gone down consistently over the years. But look, if I'm one of the few people who's still watching the show, then that's not, great for the network, and I watch it on the CW app, after it airs. They're still getting ad revenue, but it's not a tremendous thing. Most of their lucrative contracts came from deals with Netflix, where Netflix was paying hand over fist for Supergirl, for The Flash, for Arrow, for Riverdale. And now that they have HBO Max, it's not quite as lucrative, I don't think. So they're just we'll just put it on HBO Max after. And then the question becomes, well, why don't we just skip the network and go right to the streamer? Why are we bothering with the network to begin with? It seems like an added expense and a waste of time and energy. It's not like it's, cutting the cost in any way. So that's happening. Now there's reports that season 9 of The Flash will be the last, which, fine. More power to you. You should have done that. That should have been the way it was from the announcement that it was getting a season 9. Is we are doing a 9th and final season, a truncated 9th season, instead of being oh, we renewed Grant's contract for 18 episodes at $200,000 an episode. It's what the fuck? Now, then came today's other report, beyond The Flash being, on the chopping block. There's also the report that there may be a shakeup at the head of DC Entertainment, and specifically DC Films. Because, and I think I said this a few years ago, where one of the things that really connects with audiences is not just having a clear plan and a clear release schedule and a clear understanding of what's coming and when and how it relates to everything else coming. It's also having someone there who's a spokesman and really enthusiastic about what they're saying and what they're selling. So, the popularity of the Nintendo Direct has kind of put that in perspective, where it's like you can look at the Nintendo Direct and it's like you used to be like Reggie getting up there and talking about how excited he was for the new games, and you can get the feeling that, like, yeah, he works for the company and he is, by definition then a shill for whatever they're selling, but you can tell he likes what he's doing too. And the same goes for, like, I think now it's Doug Bowser, and then before he passed, Iwata was like that too. And then if you look across the street from DC at Marvel, whenever there's a big announcement to be had or something big to be had, Kevin Feige is out there. Kevin Feige is out there and he is like, hey, here is something cool, something new, something unique, and something interesting coming down the line that you can watch. And here's why I'm excited for it, and here's why you should be excited for it too. Because when you hear him talk, you can tell he was a fan first, and then he got into it, and now he's making pretend with the things that he used to make pretend with his friends on the playground with. And it's palpable. It is a palpable, like, excitement that he has, and that makes, and that helps sell what you're making. And that's an important aspect of what's going on. And actually making products that people want to buy. If you have Walter Hamada out there, and I love Walter Hamada because he's done a lot of really good things at DC Films since he's taken over, and it's like, he has done a lot of really great things. I mean, I don't agree with his insistence on Ezra Miller as the Flash. It's not something I'm particularly excited about. But look, he's doing what he can with what he's got, and it's working out for him. So, but the thing is, he's not a salesman. And I think that in the age we're in now, you need to also be a salesman. You can't just be the guy with good ideas at the top. And it's like you need someone there who has a sense for story and has a sense for, here's what we're going to do, not just now, here's what we're going to do 5 years from now, 10 years from now, 15 years from now. Because, like, even as things change for Marvel, you always have the sense that Feige had an idea of what the plan was going to be and what the contingencies were going to be should acquisitions happen. Like, that's when you listen to interviews with, like, Marcus and McFeely and other people who are involved directly with the Avengers movies and with Captain America Civil War and all these other things where, like, earth-shattering change for the studio happened around the time of, like, you can tell they had alternate plans in effect for, well, what happens if the deal with Sony doesn't go through? What happens if Sony decides to not renew the deal? What happens if all of these kind of moving pieces are like, look, there are plans in place. And he has plans in place for every contingency. And he's like, he knows what he's doing. You need someone at DC. DC does not have that. DC seems very fly by the seat of their fans, and I've said DC kind of operates almost as like studio by focus group. Or studio by algorithm, where it's like, what do people like now? Well, people like this. It's like the famous story of why did Green Lantern happen back in 2012, I want to say it was, or 2011. And the reason for Green Lantern was, well, an executive at Warner Brothers was like, well, we want to make a Batman movie, but we want to make a Batman movie, but we want him to fly a fighter jet in the movie. So, like, is there a comic where Batman flies a fighter jet? Is there some way we can make that work? Like, all of that is kind of, and then what happened was it had to get pitched as, well, Green Lantern, Hal Jordan's a fighter pilot. I'm like, all right, do that then. So, really, it was like, oh, we want to make a movie about someone with a fighter pilot, let's do that. And I can almost guarantee, if that's the way it was, there was a conversation at some point in DC, like, well, The Walking Dead's doing really good. Can we do something with zombies? And then it's like, well, we could do Blackest Night. I can guarantee that was a conversation that happened at some point, and someone's better angel was able to get in there and be like, no, don't do that. It is, and that kind of thinking is a problem. Like, to say that Marvel isn't crowd-pleasing or Marvel is not, doing something similar but on a different scale is naive. But what Marvel does is, they modify stories to accommodate for audience reaction. Because, like, I think that had the audience reaction to Tom Hiddleston as Loki not been what it was, we would not have gotten the Loki show. Like, Loki wouldn't have happened without the audience glomming onto his performance as that character. And, like, that's why that show happened. But to say that, Marvel is, like, to say that it's only DC who's doing this is ludicrous. But DC is just better about, is just worse at responding to audience, like, demands, or, I guess, audience what audiences like. So all that being said, looking at what they have, what this could mean, if Walter Hamada is ousted at Warner Brothers, and they want to, according to this article from Deadline, if they really want to look at and try and bring into alignment the comics, the TV, and the movies, and the video games into one kind of cohesive mission, like, that's great. But you need to do a lot of ousting then. It's not just Hamada who needs to be out. You need people at WB Montreal, I believe, is still making games, Rocksteady, and it's like, or not, if not there, you need, a games division who's doing that. You need a new head of DC Entertainment entirely, and you need a new, like whoever does DC TV needs to be replaced as well. And I think, if it's me, and I'm the one who's doing this, and I'm like, look, we need to do something entirely new and entirely different, and we want to start fresh. Like, you don't want to start entirely fresh, because there are things about the DC universe as it stands that people like. Like, people love Jason Momoa as Aquaman. People love Margot Robbie as Harley Quinn. There are things that people want, like Henry Cavill as Superman. People love it, and it's like the idea of bringing in, Michael Keaton to be the new aged Batman. That's cool. But if there's anyone you want to recast, then there's a simple and easy way to do it. Crisis on Infinite Earths. I know we just saw it get done on the CW, but if I'm Warner Brothers and I'm like, look, we want to start fresh, we want to bring in characters we want to keep, we want to change things, we want to do this, we want to do this, we want to send off characters and end universes, we want to do all of this stuff, simple solution, Crisis on Infinite Earths. And I know we just did it on TV, but the TV audience pulled 1 million, maybe 2. I mean, look, it gets a lot of viewers on Netflix, but I don't think it's enough to offset, what's going on. So, to the point where it's like we can make a movie and do it bigger. So just be like, look, 400 million, do 2 movies, Crisis on Infinite Earths Part 1, Crisis on Infinite Earths Part 2. And then you just do it, you stick to it, and you stick to the comics, but you bring in a new twist. You bring back as many actors and actresses from anything that you possibly can to be like, hey, do you want to play this one last time? Or one more time? And then that gives you an opportunity to recast anyone you don't want to keep. It gives you an opportunity to bring people back, to bring people, like, you want to get rid of the TV shows and you want to keep some of the characters, here's your opportunity. You want to, like, they could do a version where Kaylee Cuoco plays a live-action Harley Quinn and plays her version of Harley Quinn opposite Margot Robbie. Like, that's a possibility. Like, there are plenty of options on the table when you decide to play with the multiverse the way you can, and then use it to kind of lock things down after the fact. And be like, okay, we are now consistent, we know what we are doing, we know what the plan is from here. Like, once you do that, you can start fresh and you can start over. And I think that that's kind of what they should do. Because I think, to an extent, if they start with, like, if they start with, like, just, we're going to reboot entirely, you risk alienating the Snyder cult, and I don't want to say that and sound like I'm being like, we need to appease the Snyder cult, but I think that to an extent, it's a fan base you don't want to alienate entirely. Like, you don't want to get rid of them entirely and not have them, period. But at the same time, I think a lot of that needs to go. But a lot of what he did is still good. Like, his casting of Henry Cavill as Superman, fantastic casting. His casting of Jason Momoa as Aquaman, fantastic casting. Even his Ben Affleck casting as Batman. And he cast Gal Gadot. And Ray Fisher is great, too, as Cyborg. There's really only one there that I don't like. And then all the other adjacent stuff, I mean, Suicide Squad's already started to go away from it, but what you could do is you can just, you can pick and choose what you continue, and you can pick and choose what you acknowledge, and then start fresh. And then you can use the second part as an opportunity to be like, and here are the new heroes. Here's all the new shit, and all the old shit. And the sending off of the old shit, heralding in the new shit, let's get going. And it could be a huge event. If you bring back the right characters, you can make a cool $1 billion, if not 1.5. Maybe not 2, but you will make a lot of money on that plan. I think Warner Brothers should really explore that as an option. And I think that's probably the best way to do it. So we'll wrap up there for today. And we'll be back with more news as it happens. And we're also going to do a summation of Doctor Strange, his various appearances prior to the introduction prior to Multiverse of Madness next month. So until then, have a great rest of your week.